My name is Kolawole Akimboye, and I am the host of this podcast, Undercover Guru. And this podcast is devoted to helping people discover and thrive in careers that bring out the best in them and help them to generate superior value for the world. You are going to spend a good chunk of your life working, and you should make the best of it. In this episode, we are going to be talking about how to ace your next interview. I have found out that interviews are some of the scariest events that people can imagine. They get very uncomfortable about interviews. I'm going to try to break it down as much as possible in a way that would fill you with confidence as you go in for your next interview. This is when an employer has shown interest in your CV and wants to take it to the next level by having a conversation about the role. Now, this interview might be a physical interview, a face-to-face interview, or it might be an online interview. And right now, when this podcast is being recorded, there are a lot of conversations that are happening online. But it does not matter if it's online or face-to-face. Interviews are interviews, and they must be approached the same way. This is one thing you must know. An interview is first and foremost a sales conversation. It is a sales conversation in which you are selling one product, you. And the good thing about this conversation, which should fill you with so much confidence, is that nobody can sell this product that is you better than yourself. You have known this product your whole life anyway. You know it, what's and all. So it can't be a product knowledge issue you would have in this conversation. You might, however, have doubts that the customer, in this case the interviewer, will think you as a product is a great fit for him or not. Now, what do you do about this? There are 3 things you must do to ace your next interview. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Yes, I know. You're expecting something else. But really, that's it. You just need to prepare. Preparation is your key to acing your next interview. Now, what do you do to prepare? There are a few things I'm going to be talking about today that you can do to help put you in a good position to ace that next interview. Number 1, research the role you are applying for in the context of the industry that role that was advertised is in. Understand how you tick all the boxes for the position. Then research the company you are applying for as well. There is nothing that makes worse sense than to go for an interview and not to even know what the company sells or what the company does. I have been in interviews where I was interviewing somebody and the person had no idea what the company was doing. The person did not even understand the role they were applying for very well. The funny thing was that everything was spelt out in the job description the person saw before applying for the role. But apparently they just did not do the homework of reading the job description and understanding what was required for the role. So please, I cannot emphasize this enough. Research the role. Go online. Read about it. Read about the company. Get the company's financials if you can. Understand where they stand in the industry. Understand who their major competitors are. Understand their major products. Understand how they are competing in the market. What makes them different? There are different websites that will not just tell you about the company, but even how they conduct their interviews. So, research. The next thing you must do is to plan yourself and your time before the interview. If it is a physical interview, determine what you would wear for the interview a day before the interview. There is no need to start looking for your black shoes on the morning of an interview or to start searching for that white shirt and then finding out that it's in the laundry basket or to start running around looking for the right belt to match with what you want to wear. You need to give your brain other things to worry about on the day of the interview than what you would be wearing. What you will do if you don't prepare before the time of your interview is you would leave yourself totally frazzled and then you wouldn't bring your best self to that interview. But if it is online, you should also determine how you want to look before the interview and control your background. It wouldn't be nice for you not to plan the background of your interview before time, and then you end up, for example, putting the background you used for the Zoom party you had with your friends for the interview. It just wouldn't work. And while you are planning yourself and your time for an interview, please and please do not be late for the interview. If it's a physical interview, get there before the time of the interview. It is not a good look to be late for an interview. You've already missed the chance to make a very good first impression. And even if it is an online interview, you should be logged into whatever platform the interview is going to be done on before the interviewer shows up. It just shows that you're a serious person and you understand time management. You have already ticked a good box by being on time for the interview. The next thing is to understand common interview questions and practice them beforehand. I always suggest that you take a few of these questions and run through them with a friend, answering the questions as the person asks. I'm going to give you a few common questions that are asked at interviews and talk a little bit about how you should answer those questions. There is one very popular question that comes up in basically every interview. Tell us about yourself. When an interviewer asks you to tell him or her about yourself, remember, the interviewer already has your CV or resume. So please do not just state what is written on there. I've seen people come to interviews, and when I ask them to tell me about themselves, they would lose me. Some would go on and on talking about things that don't matter. Some would start from where they were born and how they moved from that place to another town, and then how, they had a family of 5 and their dad did this and this was what their mom was doing. That's not exactly what the interviewer wants to hear. It's not an exact family biography to tell us about how your dad loved you. The interviewer is not exactly interested in that. What you need to do is to attempt to connect the dots on your resume. For example, why you change jobs at certain times, why you decided to do an additional degree if you have one on your CV. Give some life to your CV and give some color to your unique personality. But be careful. Don't spend a long time talking about yourself. Try to tell the interviewer exactly what he needs to know and stop. You can only get this right if you've practiced it. So please, practice how to introduce yourself in a concise but meaningful manner. I'll take another common question. I have heard some very funny responses when I asked this question at interviews. What are your biggest weaknesses? Or tell me your biggest weakness. Or tell me a big weakness you have. Now, when an interviewer asks you this question, please do not avoid this question by saying you have only strengths, you don't really have any weaknesses, or you spend some time saying, oh, so what weaknesses do I have? Like, I don't really have any weaknesses. What it shows when you say things like that is that you have very low self-awareness and you might lack a willingness to grow and get better. Everybody has weaknesses. Your ability to identify your weaknesses shows your willingness to improve and to get better and to mitigate for those weaknesses. So, the key to answering this question is to pick some sort of theoretical weakness and then find a way to transform that weakness into some sort of strength. For example, you could say, my biggest weakness is my inability to stop working. It makes me a very poor friend as I sometimes miss events because of work. Or you can say, I can get into the work so much that everyone would have left me in the office and gone home. Or you could say, I am always so intent on meeting set standards that sometimes I can seem rigid to colleagues. But I am just so focused on making sure things are done right. Like I said, it's a theoretical weakness that you are supposed to spin in a way that it doesn't look like a weakness anymore. You must have one. Find something that works for you. Spin it from being a weakness into some sort of strength. Those are just two of the questions you could get at an interview. In the next podcast, we'll be focused mainly on many other common questions that people get at interviews, and I will be talking about how you can answer those questions. But for today, let me leave you with this. Taking a chance on a job interview is perceived as a risk by many, as it entails putting yourself out there for strangers to judge, accept, or reject, which can be really scary. However, what is risk really? It's just a statistical probability of a negative event either occurring or not occurring. When you walk across the road, there's a statistical risk that you may be hit by a car. When you fly in a jet, there's a statistical risk that you could crash and die. I don't think that has stopped any of us from either consistently crossing roads or taking plane rides to the places we want to go to. Our perceptions of risk are notoriously inaccurate. But that by itself is a much deeper conversation. We can talk about risk from now till next year. But dealing with and managing the risk of getting a negative outcome at your next interview is what we have really focused on today. We are mitigating and managing that risk with preparation. And once you have prepared properly, then it makes no sense to be afraid for the next interview. You don't have to be afraid of the interviewer or the interview process. If you do not take anything away from this episode, take this with you. Do not be afraid. The world deserves the best version of you, and I am sure you would give it to us. With a little preparation, there is absolutely nothing you cannot do. Thank you very much for listening to this episode today. I hope it has been as much fun for you listening as it has been for me putting it together. Please remember to share this episode and other episodes of the Undercover Guru podcast with your friends on social media. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.